Hello, arts fundraisers, and welcome back to the second installment of RSC's video series, Creative Capital. This session will dive into RSC Associates' top fundamentals in arts fundraising. We keep our fundamentals simple and easy to remember, and collectively, these fundamentals reinforce what we know best. Successful fundraising is the result of building successful relationships. But what does it mean to build strong relationships, and how do you start? Let's look at some key areas related to relationship-based fundraising. These apply to all varieties of nonprofits, but at RSC, we focus on arts and cultural organizations, so you'll hear me speaking in that context throughout the video. Let's just take a general look at some of those best practices here. Number one, relationship-driven fundraising. Building and maintaining a relationship with your donors is paramount. We think about this as taking a series of steps towards each other. You take a step towards the donor takes a step towards you. Ultimately, it means spending time listening and understanding their motivations, getting to know them, and then positioning the organization as a place where they can make an impact. The key to relationship-driven fundraising is personalization. Each donor is unique, and your strategy should reflect that. Number two, relationships follow a momentum cycle. I'm just going to touch on this. We're going to talk about it more in just a couple of minutes, but we believe in a cycle of donors, how they enter into our process, and then how they spend their time with us, how we spend our time with them. And I'll outline that for you in just a moment. When crafting your message, focus on the value that your organization brings. That's what motivates donors. It's who you are and what you do and the community that you serve. They want to know how their support will make a difference. And so I say focus less on your financial needs and more on the value of the work you're doing and how it aligns with their values. Number four, key fundraising principles. First, you want to build momentum early in your fiscal year. You want to achieve early wins so that you can meet goal. Front-loading your fundraising efforts in the first half of the fiscal year helps build momentum and ensure success, and it allows time to recover should you ever have any disappointing response from, let's say, a major donor. Aim to hit 65% of your goal within the first 6 months of that fiscal year. This gives you time to cultivate, ask, and follow up on the relationships that need more dedicated time. Don't wait until the last minute or you're doomed to failure. I've seen this happen many times. You've probably experienced it. But the more you plan, the more you can execute your fundraising goals. The second one is begin with your best prospects and donors. And we'll get into that just a little bit later, but think current donors, think current consumers, think board, of course, and I'll explain that in more detail in an upcoming video. And third, but last on this one, in terms of just fundraising principles, is when in doubt, err on the side of action. Err on the side of asking too, and we're going to talk about the difference between those as we get it more into the video series. But asking brings clarity. When you err on the side of asking, it brings clarity, and it often helps the process move forward, even if you don't get an immediate yes. I say err on the side of asking because so often staff and volunteers want to wait for that perfect moment to make their gift request. I've got news for folks who believe that, and that is that annual funds rarely have time to wait for a perfect moment. These are just a few of the opening thoughts, but let's get specific. What are some of our best practices in fundraising? I'll give you about eight of our top recommendations. First, let's outline what I mean when I say donor flywheel or donor momentum cycle that I mentioned just a moment ago. We think about developing donor relationships as an ever-maturing process. It cannot simply be about telling donors who we are, because in most cases, those donors have been around a long time, and they are consumers of our products and our services and our art. They might know more about the organization than we do. But if we believe that relationship development is core to everyone being satisfied, then let's look at what the core components of that relationship building are. Think of the relationship building process like it's a flywheel. The more momentum you build, the easier it is to maintain it. It's about creating a cycle of thoughtful engagement where donors feel personally connected to your mission. It's not just about securing funds. It's about creating a sustainable fundraising ecosystem with your donors always top of mind. Remember, there are primarily three motivations why people give. They give because of what it does for the organization, so your arts cultural organization. They might do it for what it does for the community. They might give because of what it does for them personally. I'm not saying that every donor just has one exclusive motivation. They might have all three, but each one will gravitate towards one of those motivations. Your job in this donor cycle, in this flywheel, part of the process as you get to know them and build that relationship is to find out what their motivation of giving is so that you can talk with them about it and make sure their relationship with us is very, very satisfying. Well, like I said, there are multiple reasons why people give, but each donor tends to gravitate towards one of those areas. Never forget that. No matter the size of the gift, part of your job is to find out which one they gravitate towards and then lean into that to make it, again, very satisfying for them. Let's get into the details so that you can build a high-producing annual fund using the best of RSC's fundraising fundamentals. Some of the information that I'll share with you, I'll call practical and tactical, I suppose, while other information will be more strategic in nature. We'll get into it. You'll be able to tell the difference. Here's an overview of our rules for annual fund success. The first one is create a 3-year plan and timeline to support aspirational revenue goals. But you think annual fund, why create a 3-year plan? I understand, but we'll talk about why that's important. We want the plan to be tactical. Here's what I'll tell you now. You want that plan to be tactical. You want it to be taking actions, getting results, measuring results, making adjustments, taking the next action. That's the cycle we want you to think about. Number 2 is build an annual fund with specific revenue goals in each division. It's not enough to have one general bottom line goal for annual fund. You need to know per those divisions of individual giving and board giving, corporate giving and grants and those things that we talked about in an earlier chapter. How much will each line be responsible for, and how does that help your goal then? Build an annual fund with specific revenue goals per division. Number 3, front load solicitation activity to achieve 65% of the annual fund goal in the first 6 months of your fiscal year. Now, I said that earlier. I'll say it again because it's that important. It's that important that you build momentum early in your annual fund so that you can ensure success by the time you get to the end of the fiscal year. And number 4, the board should demonstrate pace-setting giving. The giving that the board does sets the tone for all other giving. It's not a fee that they pay for the privilege of being on the board. We want this to be one of their top 3 gifts because they care about the organization and they want others to care about the organization. Number 5, create momentum and positive urgency. So we talk about urgency, and almost always urgency is talked about in a negative way. The urgency of getting something done, it almost has a pressure to it. This is positive urgency. This is just about momentum. Another way to put it is to say, what's our leverage? What's our confidence that we build? How do we encourage donors to give early, to give now? And those specific strategies then help you with that front loading. Number 6, major gift solicitation must be relationship based and asks must be in person whenever possible, not mechanized. And so what do I mean by not mechanized? If you are sending emails or letters to your top donors, let's say $1,000 and above, instead of meeting with them to ask for their support, that is not relationship-based fundraising. And you really, really need to build relationships with these folks. You need to know who they are. They need to know who you are. And they need to know you, like you, and trust you. And part of that is just meeting with you and getting to know you and you getting to know them. And so if the ask is mechanized in an arts organization, it can really be detrimental to you. Number 7, cultivation and stewardship are as important as the ask. As fundraisers, we obsess about the ask. How do you do it? What's the plan? When do you do it? Who do you talk to? What's the order? Those are all very important things. But we often forget that we have to cultivate people before we ask them. They need a plan. And that we have to steward them after they become donors because that's part of the relationship. And so this value-based fundraising where we really care about relationships, this cultivation and stewardship are imperative. We have to do it. It's asking, even person to person, feels more transactional, particularly if there is no stewardship and cultivation involved. And last on our list, number 8, is the case for support must be value-based. What do I mean when I say value-based? Well, it means that we're not talking about our needs. We don't talk about, as an arts institution, it's not about how many musicians we're trying to feed or how much a program costs and how much money we don't have right now to fund that program. I mean, those are all good things in the process of the relationship, but this isn't how we talk about it. We talk about it in terms of value. we have these musicians or we have this program because it adds very specific value to the community. That's what we focus on. We focus on the value, not the need. As an arts organization, and particularly one that has its doors open and has public come in quite frequently, it's actually easy to talk about value and not need, and we'll get into that during the case development segment. I want to hone in on this just a little bit more and talk about proper focus, because it's easy to get distracted, and it's really easy to get distracted on things we can't do anything about. We want the action that happens within the annual fund to have real value, real purpose, real meaning, real results. So what I tell people is that there are three things you can consider when trying to maintain the proper focus, when trying to really get the annual fund campaign going, get it moving, and keep it moving. First of all, focus on the things you can control. There are lots of things you can control. And if you go through this entire video series, you'll see them firsthand. You'll hear them firsthand. So there are things that we can control. There are things that we can't control, but we can influence. And so that's to our benefit later. And then there are things that we can't do either. We can't control them. We can't influence them. And I used to say, just forget them. But I think you can forget them for the time being and you can adapt to them. Let me give you some examples. You can control when you solicit someone or when an event occurs at your organization, and you can control what your message is to encourage someone to make a gift. So those are a few things you can control. You can influence how your city council views the role of your organization and the arts in general within your community, but you can't really control how they think about it. You can't control the money that they allocate for arts organizations, or you can't control whether or not the mayor comes to your event. You can influence those things, but you can't control them. And last, you can't do either about when a foundation changes its granting focus. It changes its charter in some way. But perhaps you can now eventually adapt to that change. So when we say adapt to it, you could, for instance, if there's a qualifying organization based on the new granting options, and you can partner meaningfully with that organization, that's something you can adapt to down the road. It's not a given, but it's an opportunity. It's very easy to focus on number three. It's what most people do. They focus on the things they can't control and that they can't influence because it allows them to think, and thinking is easy, doing is hard. We could go down that rabbit hole together. But while I say ignore whatever it is for right now on number three, there are plenty of opportunities to adapt. There are variables that you certainly can control, and there are certainly variables that you can influence. Those are the things you ought to be focusing on. That's where the difference is made. That's where things bend in your favor. When planned and executed correctly, your annual fund will produce immediately. Over time, you'll want to refine that productivity into efficiency, and you make it an efficient productivity. And every time that you and your team deal with things outside of your control and influence, you lose time that could produce relationships that could help you get to your goal, that could create efficiencies or open new doors, that expose someone to a program that they didn't know about and want to support. So stay within that control and influence zone as much as you can so that you can maximize time, money, people, and efficiency in a creative way that only you can do. Let's look at results-based annual fund strategies. We've got a few of these. The first point looks familiar because we just talked about it, but it's worth saying again. Focus on what you can control and what you can influence. Forget about and adapt to the rest of those things. There's nothing you can do about them right now, and you have plenty of other things that you can control and influence. Go there. Number two, set clear goals and front load your timeline. We talked some about this. Remember the 65% by mid-fiscal year. To do this, you have to have set your aspirational monthly goals, quarterly goals in every fundraising division. You have to come out into day one of the fiscal year very strong, very quick, and knowing exactly what it is that you need to do and who you need to talk to and what the message is, who's going to talk to them, all those sorts of things. So when we say set those clear goals and front load that timeline, it is so you can get out of the gate quickly and start to achieve your annual operating goal immediately. Number three, segment your donors and then overlay each with a donor flywheel. You can't really take all your broad-based donors and put them through the donor flywheel, but you can take segments of them. You could say, for instance, if it's a performing arts organization, let's look at single ticket buyer non-donors, We're going to approach them in this way because they have this kind of characteristic. Versus, let's say, a $5,000 donor who you really, really do want to put through the donor flywheel and say, where are they in this stage and what can we and should we be doing next? Have they received the proper level of stewardship, etc.? You can even do it with institutions, and you should do it with institutions because even though that's institutional giving, they're all run by people. They're all driven by relationship. Now, I know you've got to fill out your forms and so forth, but don't let that be the hang up. Treat those as you would treat people as well. Of course, meet the criteria, but treat them as people as well. Number 4 on this is identify new prospect resources. Always, always, always keep looking for people. Always keep looking for institutions. Don't get relaxed on that and never believe that you have reached everyone you're ever going to reach. Never stop looking for fans. Never stop looking for people who care about you. I would even say look outside of regular consumers, the people and institutions who care about the community. Because if they care about the community and you're part of that community and you add value as an institution, you may not be one of their top 3 or top 5 donations that they make each year, but they will support you. There's an opportunity for them to get closer. And when we talk about that relationship building, this is why it's important. And continuing on then, identify and activate your internal resources. To make that flywheel work, you need hands. You need lots of hands, lots of feet, and lots of people helping. So gather your internal resources. Think people. I mean, there are other resources too, but think people. Think staff and board and artists and other volunteers. You'll need that help to be successful. And the bigger your program grows and the more dedicated you are to stewardship of donors, the more people you're going to need. Number 6, develop and practice telling a compelling story. Quite often, this is called the case, it's called the message, and sometimes it's called the story. We'll get into that a little bit more in one of our upcoming videos, but practice telling a compelling story because it's really, really easy to downshift back into need. And so the way that you get a compelling story crafted and tellable so that you can say it to others is by practicing it. Number 7, supplement acquisition identification via strong online presence. What does that mean? Well, what it means is monthly giving, website presence, social media. Those are the kinds of things that you want to look at that begin to just attract other people. Curious people will find and see what you're about. Never give up on that. It's harder to measure, and we're big measurers at RSC, but it's something that we believe you should always be doing. Always be out there, always have a presence, because you don't know who's looking for you and you don't know who's reading your information necessarily. And so give them an opportunity to learn and to raise their hand. Last on the list is matching gifts are magic. Let me just talk about a matching gift for a second. A matching gift is not an employer matched gift. So there are some large companies who, when their employees make a gift, the company will match it. There's not nearly as many of those still around as there was 30 years ago, but there are plenty. But that's not what we're talking about. Instead, we're talking about a challenge grant. And I'm sure you've seen it on direct mail pieces. You've seen it on e-blasts that come to you, but it's a challenge grant. It's usually $1 for dollar that comes from an individual or a foundation, and it's generally focused on generating new money. So if I've never donated before or it's been a while, that's new money. If I donate every year, but I increase my gift, the amount of the increase will be counted as part of meeting that challenge grant. So it's a really great piece of leverage. I've never seen anyone get tired of it. I get that question a lot. Like, don't these matching gifts get tired? No, they don't. They really don't. And so continue to do them, continue to set them up. If you're not utilizing them, then you probably should begin to. All right, number 9, lean into relationship-based fundraising more than ever before. So what does this mean? Well, it means that more personal interactions and fewer passive actions are required. Despite all those things that I just said about putting information out there to attract new people, we need to really invest in our very best. And so more personal interactions, fewer passive, mechanical communications. This is an area where I don't encourage efficiency over style. I know it takes time. I know it takes time out of the day to meet with donors, to work with them, to find out their interests, to adapt to those interests. I understand. But people give money to people. They always have. I hope they always will. And they give to people who they know, like, and trust. You need to be one of those people. If you're an asker, you need to become one of those people who they know, like, and trust. That's pretty difficult to do strictly by emails and voicemails and letters. It's not impossible. It's just more difficult, especially the higher up the donor pyramid that you climb. People who are giving you substantial amounts almost always do it because they love the organization and they want to have a relationship with it. So I say communicate often, lean into that relationship building, and do it more than ever before. Number 10, communicate often and do it in high value ways. And what do I mean by that? Well, it means don't just call people to call them. It means don't just send something to say that you sent it. Every communication should add value to the relationship. That's my definition. Everything that's done should add value to the relationship between that donor and the organization. It can't always be transactional because that's a really shallow relationship. If you're trying to gauge what's a high value relationship and you're trying to say, well, is this a quality communication that I'm about to do? It has to pass what I call a so what test. That test to the reader. It's not to you, it's to the reader. So if I get a direct mail or if I get an email from something that I give money to and I get done reading it and I'm like, so what? What is that? It doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't add value. It was just like they were pumping out information, hoping that I would read it and think that it was terrific. We have to be a little more specific. We have to be sure that what we're sending out actually adds value and that it is not transactional. And this idea of saying this communication that I just produced, does it add value? And if I read it and I can answer the so what question, for instance, so what? Well, so that you know that we're doing things that are in line with the values of the organization and the people who give to it. We're doing this outreach for schools now that we weren't doing before, or we had this level of impact, or we want you to come see this thing firsthand. Those are the kinds of things that really, really add value. And if you can't do that, if the communication doesn't do that, don't send it. Last on this list, I said it earlier, err on the side of asking because it brings clarity. But in many stages, an ask isn't always the way to go. It may not be the way to go. However, taking some form of action is. And so whether it's outreach or invitations or information or coffee or whatever you're doing, some other level of meaningful engagement, you can err on the side of action. And so when you think about that flywheel and you think about how we identify them, we cultivate them, and we steward them, in that mix is the ask, of course, to err on the side of action. If you feel like you haven't had communication with someone in a while, this is a very, very good place to start. Think about what kind of outreach should we have, and then make that happen. If a relationship is stalled, that's a pretty good time to make something happen. Or if you are in doubt because you haven't heard from someone in a while, that's a pretty good place to make it happen. Of course, make that ask when it's appropriate, but also share information that's valuable when it's appropriate. It's okay. You'll get a result. Take an action, you get a result. All right, moving on now to wrap this up. What are your next steps? First of all, I want you to think about how you can build momentum early. Build momentum early in your fundraising efforts. What can you do in the next 30 days to create momentum for your campaign, your annual fund campaign especially? What can you do in the next 30 days? Reflect on how you can build momentum early in those fundraising efforts. To do that, let's consider these actions. First of all, assess your current strategies. Review your timeline and your plan. If you have one, review it. Review those existing fundraising approaches and identify areas where you can implement early momentum tactics. And if you're late in your fiscal year, then at this point, say what actions are the most urgent and critical over the next 30 days. And then as you get into your new fiscal year, begin to really, really front load. Number 2, set short-term milestones. Establish achievable goals for the next 30 days and create a sense of accomplishment and drive for you and all those hands and feet that we were talking about earlier. All the people who are helping you need to be able to measure success. So set those short-term milestones that you want to achieve. Maybe it's reaching a challenge grant. Maybe it's getting a direct mail piece out. Maybe it's having the volunteers host something so that you can have follow-up calls with prospective donors. There's all sorts of things like that that you can measure. Number 3, engage that team. Share your strategies with your team, all those hands and feet. Share your strategies and make sure that everyone is aligned and that they're motivated to achieve those wins that you need, whether they're early wins early in the fiscal year or you're deeper into the fiscal year and you need to take action now. Our conclusion is the foundation of fundraising success is building relationships, no surprise, that build over time. They grow over time. Approaching your annual fund with positive urgency is great, but don't lean into desperation. Urgency is great, desperation is not. Be positively urgent. Your fundraising efforts must focus on creating value and momentum using RSC Associates fundraising fundamentals.